Hey friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg, and this continues to be the Audiophiliac Daily Show. And today it's going to be all about not one, but two headphones. The Beyerdynamic T1, now in its third generation, guys. And this is the T5, the sister model, the T5, also, by coincidence, also in its third generation form. Now, they don't look anything like the previous generation models. We'll start with that. And do they sound at all like them? Well, we will get to that in due order. But I will say, I'm going to have a brief interruption here to thank everyone out there. We, all of us, just hit 140,000 subscribers for this thing called the Audiophiliac Daily Show. So thank you, everyone who has already subscribed, and if you have not yet subscribed, plenty of room, because we're on our way to 150,000 subscribers. So you can be part of that surge, that's upward surge in subscribers. Okay, enough of that. Anyway, both of these headphones, like the previous generation models, they are both made in Germany. This is an open back headphone. The T1 is open back, and it never was before. The previous generations were semi-open, which to me is closed. This is a truly open headphone. T5 is closed and always has been. Now this model gives you some isolation from external noise, that sort of thing, and it's very comfortable. They're both extremely comfortable high-end headphones. And that's not true for a lot of high-end headphones that are kind of heavy and clunky. These are fairly compact and light. Each one weighs 360 grams. And to put that in some sort of proportion, the Audeze LCD X, which I use in this review, is 635 grams. So it's a lot heavier. These guys are lightweights in the best sense of the word. What else can I tell you? Well, they're really so similar, other than the open and closed T1, T5. But there are other differences. The T5 is more of a portable headphone because it blocks out external noise, so you can take it on the train or plane or bus or go outdoors and listen to it and not hear the external noise intruding in your experience. And the T1, it lets all that noise in. So it's more of a stay-at-home or office or something sort of headphone. You want to listen in a quiet place to the T1. So compare and contrast. So the T5 comes with a short cable, because you're going to be using it possibly with your phone. It's 1.2 meters long. The cable for the T1 is 3 meters long. So. But all of this is just preamble. The sound is what it's all about. Oh, one other really important feature, so to speak, is they're both made in Germany, where Beyerdynamic is based. And Beyerdynamic has been making headphones since 1938, 37 or 38. And their first model was the DT48. It was a dynamic headphone. And they've been perfecting the art of headphone design ever since. And these models certainly carry on in that tradition. For comparisons in this review, I brought out my first generation T1. And I don't have an earlier T5, unfortunately. But I also brought out a Sennheiser, a Massdrop Sennheiser HD6XX headphone. And also the Audeze LCD X. So that was sort of the format for judging the overall quality of these headphones. But I will say up front that as soon as I popped on the T1 third generation, I felt, and I hadn't listened to the original T1 in a while, and I'll tell you why in just a second, but as soon as I heard the T1 third generation, I was, yes, this is right. It has that rightness to the sound. It is highly, highly transparent. It is open, not the most open sounding of headphones, but plenty open, nice focusing on the image, very comfortable to wear for extended periods of time, very solid bass. Just an all-round terrific headphone. Now switching over to the T5, which is the closed version, well, usually closed versions sound closed. That is, the sound is more stuck inside your head and canned. Now that was not the case here, because the T5 wasn't as open as the T1. If you didn't know it was a closed back headphone, you might assume it's open. It's that good. And that's a rare quality for high-end or any closed headphone to sound open and spacious. Both models, both headphones, T1 and T5, are both low impedance, easy to drive headphones. They are 32 ohms. That kind of surprised me because my first generation T1 is 600 ohms, and I believe the second generation was as well. I'm not so sure about the T5. T1, T5, they're both $999. So it's not a better, which is better, it's which is the right one for your application. In other words, if you're going to listen to it on the go, trains, planes, traveling, you're going to use the T5 would be the far better option. And it does a pretty good job blocking external noise. If you're going to be listening mostly at home, the T1 would be the preferred option because it's just a little more open and spacious sounding. So over the course of the review, well, as this all got started, I only listened to the T1 third generation, though I have a T1 first generation here. But I didn't listen to it probably for a week or so because I just wanted to get into the sound of the third generation model. And like I said, it was all good. It was all good. As for the T1 first generation, well, little side trip here. Of all the headphones I have in my vast collection here, that's the one that Mrs. Audiophiliac uses as her daily driver. She's really into opera. She watches opera on her computer and just listens to music, and she just loves that headphone. So I had to take it away from her for a day or so to do these comparisons, and she loves that T1. Anyway, so I got to do my T1 first generation versus third generation comparison, and well, it kind of went the way I expected. That is that the first generation model does not have the bass punch, slam, weight, etc. of the third generation. Not even close. It's also, because it's not truly an open headphone, it's semi-open, it sounded much more stuck inside my head, more canned, and dynamically not as free. It just seems to hold things back a little bit more. And I should mention that my headphone amplifier for all of these comparisons of all the headphones was always the same. It was the Pass Labs HPA1. And so anyway, I was using a very powerful, really good amplifier for everything. And even with that, the original T1 was nowhere as alive sounding as the third generation model. Oh, I did review the T1 second generation model in 2016 for Sound and Vision magazine. And I just read that review, and that does seem closer to the sound of what I'm experiencing now, because I don't have the T1 second generation here to compare. But as I continued with my listening sessions, I really felt the big improvement, other than the bass, which is the most obvious part, that the top end clarity and finesse and detail were really superb. Switching over to the T5 third generation, it was much the same. The bass actually was even better, more oomph to it, a little more weight to it. Not as open, which made it sound, instruments sounded closer, vocalists sounded closer, more, let's say, intimate, more right there kind of feeling. So they sound, they're 90% the same, let's put it that way. T1, T5, third generation, they sound very, very much the same. And if I had to choose, well, I would choose the T1 because I prefer open sounding headphones in general. But the T5 is a really close second because I like that tightness to the sound that the close gives me. For a dynamic test, I pulled out the Explorations in Space and Time CD, which you can get as a download now. I don't think you can buy the CD anymore. But the question is, it's a Chesky recording. I was present at the session. It was a fun session. It was 3 percussionists, and they were basically doing total improvs of each tune that's on this album. but the dynamics, and not just wham bam, soft to loud dynamics, but the shading of all the dynamics. So when there's some tracks with very like tinkling bells and a gong and vibes, just all sorts of great little percussion instruments, just hearing each one so precisely laid out. I'm talking about the T1 third generation. Really exquisite, really beautiful. So at this point, I brought in the Audeze LCD-X for a comparison. Now that headphone, though it's considered an open-backed headphone, it wasn't really quite as open as the T1 third generation. It certainly had more gutsy, low-end impact. When those guys are hitting the big drums, whew, man, you could feel it. It was really extraordinary on the LCD-X. Switching back to the T1 third generation, it wasn't in that league. It was good. It was really good, but it was not up to the standards set by the LCD-X. As for that detail, transparency, openness, I would say they don't sound the same, but they're in the same league. Let's put it that way. If you already have an LCD-X and you're really digging it, I wouldn't say switching to the T1 is going to make you all that happy. I think you already got a great headphone. But if you're searching around for a headphone right now and you're trying to decide, there's a big difference in price, like a $700 difference in price between the LCD-X and this model here, so that might tip the scales for you. They're both really good, but as I said earlier, the difference is that the LCD-X is a lot heavier, 635 grams versus 360 for the T1 third generation. So that could skew your decision process. As for the Mass Drop Sennheiser HD6XX, well, that's a much more affordable headphone, but everybody knows that headphone. So a lot of people do, at least, and I wanted to bring that into the fray. And first of all, it's a very open sounding headphone. And in that sense, the T1 was, I'd say the T1 was better, but it wasn't hugely better. But in every other way, the T1's just was more dynamic, had more low-end grunt, power, earth-moving abilities. The high end was far more refined sounding and clear, more transparent, etc., etc. So yeah, it's basically like 4 or 5 times the price of the HD6XX. But if you got the coin, stepping up to the buyer would be a wise move. They're both very, very comfortable. Speaking of comfort, I should throw that into the story here. One other feature I don't want to forget here is this case. It's beautifully done. It's pretty strong, so you could jam the case with the headphones inside your luggage and not worry about crushing your headphones. These are beautiful headphones. I have to point out, just in case you don't think about it this way, headphones are a special category of audio, and not just for the obvious reasons, but because you wear headphones. You don't wear your speakers, you don't wear your turntable or amplifier, right? You barely even touch them, right? Well, you do for turntables, but for headphones, you literally wear your headphone, you wear your audio. So how they feel is hugely important to long-term satisfaction. So they don't have to just sound great, they have to feel great. These do, absolutely. So we're good, I think. I think we have rounded the corner there. This concludes this review of the Beyerdynamic T1 third generation and the Beyerdynamic T5 third generation. Both winners, both really superb headphones. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and this continues to be the Audiophiliac Daily Show. As I said in the front, if you like it, please subscribe. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much for doing so. But you should check out the Patreon, which can be found at patreon.com/audiophiliac. Oh, and while you're here, why don't you check out the playlist for interviews. I did this interview with Dan D'Agostino. I don't mention this one often. It's a really great one. I will link to it below. And he was talking about listening. His design process has shifted over the years from being more measurement-oriented to listening-oriented. It's pretty cool. And he's also talking about the relationship between making pizza. He has a pizza oven in his home. Making pizza and making great audio. So you wouldn't want to miss that. And of course, I've got lots of interviews with Andrew Jones and Nelson Pass and John Grado and Harry Weisfeld from VPI. All here, all for your entertainment. I think we've done it. My work here is, at last, truly complete. So again, thank you for watching, and I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.